Can you put a number on how much infrastructure spending our nation needs right now to fix our broken bridges, tunnels, roads, etc.?
Sure, yeah. Thank you, Sara, for having me on. I think the situation is this. There's just not enough money to pay for roads. And when the Congress goes to reauthorize the current highway bill, they're going to be about 30% short of what their current spending is. So if you look at what current spending is, they're going to need to fill that 30% gap. And there's a lot of other stakeholders out there that say we need to be spending much more, in some cases almost double. So there's division among the total amount, but Congress definitely needs to do some work to fill the gap.
Matt, about 6 years ago, the bridge collapsed in Minneapolis, and there were fatalities, about 13 of them. Everyone was talking about fixing our nation's bridges and infrastructure. Has any progress been made since then?
Yes, actually there has been. Since that time, the number of structurally deficient bridges has actually declined to its lowest levels. It's at about 11% right now of the total in the country, and that was actually as high as 22% in 1992. So we're making progress. The difference now, as opposed to then, is that bridge collapse was in the chairman's district of the House Transportation and Infrastructure.
Well, that brings us to Hans Nichols right now at the White House. Hans, I was reading Charles Dickens this weekend about Victorian railroads, which was an ugly
Naturally
mess.
You were, as one tends to do on the weekend.
Yes, that's true. Building railroads in the 1840s was ugly. Building roads, fix it. Why can't we get this done? We're not Victorian England.
Well, labor practices have changed a little bit. You know, you talk to the folks that put that rail line in from the spur on the coast of the Indian Ocean into Mombasa.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, you didn't want to be an Indian worker along those, like, those lions would come out and get you.
I want to fix a bridge across the Hudson River.
Here, a couple suggestions. So 11% is the number on structurally deficient. They should have signs on every bridge. This bridge is structurally deficient. Look, when you get into when you get into the conversation about road spending and transportation bills, you always get this question of whether or not there are enough projects out there in the pipeline that can be shovel ready. This was the huge debate inside of the stimulus, inside the Obama administration at the beginning. How do you get that many shovel-ready projects? In the stimulus package, they put something like $50 billion out there, but a lot of that went for glossy, high-speed rail. When you look at the sort of nuts and bolts of infrastructure, that's not where the stimulus money went, and that's not where apparently some of the money in Washington State is going.
And that is why, Hans, I would argue that what has become, that wasn't a very partisan issue, infrastructure spending, has become one. It's really hard to find a targeted program that the government can successfully implement to spend on our nation's infrastructure.
You have a lot of, you have a lot of aspirational projects where people want to sort of, especially in Washington State, where you have a project where you want the state to look like what you want it to look like, instead of actually fixing roads. I mean, Washington State has some of the highest gas taxes in the country, right? They're still way below what you're at Europe.
Matt,
we're 50 cents on the dollar versus $4 on a gallon, which is what you have. I mean, 8 times higher in Germany.
That's where I wanted to go. Matt Hummer, when you look at the gas tax in the United States, why can't we get this fixed to fix the bridge in Pittsburgh, the bridge in Houston? I just don't understand what we're waiting for.
Yes, Tom. The tax hasn't been raised since 1993, and that's because it's just politically unpalatable. You know, at a time when we're in recession, an additional cost for energy is just not going to happen and go over well with the public. So what they've been doing in the meantime is dipping from the Treasury's general fund to fill the gap. That ultimately has to happen, and I think, you know, as Congress looks to reauthorize the bill, it's going to be a mix of a gas tax increase and greater utilization of privatization of infrastructure projects.
Well, Matt, which is the right way? Should states just take this into their own hands with all of the wrangling over the federal budget?
Well, I think that's what a lot of people are suggesting, and that's actually the division here in Washington. You know, people say transportation tends to be local. If you think about your situation in New York, you guys rely on transit, but down in Texas and other places, you know, they drive. So there's division among what the money should actually be used for, and a lot of members in the House are suggesting we should just turn it over to the states.
The president has argued, Hans, and you have covered this very well, that infrastructure spending not only helps makes our roads and bridges safer, but also there's an economic benefit as well. Jobs, the economy. Is there an economic benefit? Is there any study that links our GDP growth from infrastructure spending?
I don't know about the sort of multiplier effect, which is what you're talking about. There's obviously a direct correlation between spending on roads and jobs. That's not a hugely, this was the debate in the stimulus, that's not a hugely efficient way to create jobs by just building roads. Yes, you do have more construction jobs out there. In terms of a multiplier effect on, say, you know, we spend like 2% of GDP on transportation. We look at like 5 or 6% in China. You know, I don't know where the multipliers come down on that.